Welcome to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, Applicant Orientation for 84.325K, Personnel Preparation in Special Education, Early Intervention, and Related Services for Personnel Serving Children with Disabilities. My name is Sun Young An, and I'm one of the competition managers for this grant competition. Next slide, please. The information that we are about to present has been summarized due to the logistics of this webinar and is for guidance only. Please read the entire notice inviting applications, the instructions and all other related statutes, regulations, and references. Also, for additional information related to submitting an application, please review the recorded webinar titled Applying for the Office of Special Education Programs Discretionary Grants. Next slide, please. The notice inviting applications for 84.325K was published in the Federal Register on February 4th, 2022. Applications are due no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on April 15th, 2022. Next slide. The application package contains the Dear Applicant letter, the notice inviting applications, the Federal Register notice, and the grants.gov system submission procedures and tips for applicants, the priority description and selection criteria, general information, and required forms. Required forms can be found on the grants.gov 84.325K listing. Next slide, please. The purpose of the personal preparation in special education, early intervention, and related services for personnel serving children with disabilities grant program is to 1. Help address state-identified needs for personnel preparation in special education, early intervention, related services, and regular education to work with children, including infants, toddlers, and youth with disabilities. And 2, ensure that those personnel have the necessary skills and knowledge derived from practices that have been determined through scientifically based research to be successful in serving those children. The 325K grant for FY 2022 is funded at $9.5 million. From the $9.5 million, we anticipate funding 38 total awards across 2 absolute priority areas and 2 focus areas under each absolute priority. Focus area A, early childhood, and focus area B, school-age children with disabilities. Next slide, please. Absolute priority 1 is interdisciplinary preparation in special education, early intervention, and related services for personnel serving children with disabilities who have high intensity needs. Absolute priority 2 is preparation of special education, early intervention, and related services personnel attending minority serving institutions, including historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, and Asian American and Pacific Islander serving institutions. Next slide. Awards are evenly funded under each absolute priority, meaning 19 awards for AP1 and 19 awards for AP2. Applicants may apply under both absolute priorities, but must submit 2 separate applications. And applicants must clearly identify in the required abstract template if the proposed project addresses AP1 or AP2. Next slide. Eligible applicants for absolute priority 1 are institutions of higher education and their affiliated nonprofit organizations. Eligible applicants for absolute priority 2 are minority serving institutions of higher education and their affiliated nonprofit organizations. Next slide, please. The purpose of Absolute Priority 1 interdisciplinary preparation is to increase the number and the quality of personnel who are fully credentialed to serve children, including infants, toddlers, and youth with disabilities who have high-intensity needs. For the purposes of this priority, high-intensity needs refers to a complex array of disabilities, including multiple disabilities, significant cognitive disabilities, significant physical disabilities, significant sensory disabilities, significant autism, significant emotional disabilities, or significant learning disabilities, including dyslexia, or the needs of children with these disabilities requiring intensive individualized interventions that are specifically designed to address persistent learning or behavior difficulties, implemented with greater frequency and for an extended duration than is commonly available in a typical classroom or early intervention setting, excuse me, or which require personnel to have knowledge and skills in identifying and implementing multiple evidence-based interventions. Next slide. Under the Absolute Priority 1, a scholar is a student who is enrolled in a graduate degree program that leads to certification, licensure, or an endorsement to serve IDA-eligible children with disabilities. Personnel preparation programs that prepare individuals to be educational interpreters for the deaf at the bachelor's degree level can qualify under this priority and are exempted from the interdisciplinary requirement and the requirement for 2 or more graduate degree programs. While interdisciplinary projects are not required for educational interpreters, they are encouraged. To meet the interdisciplinary requirement, projects must support scholars from 2 or more graduate degree programs, such as special education or early intervention, and 1 or more related services areas. Please note that this is a change from previous year's interdisciplinary requirement, which allowed 2 or more related services combination without special education or early intervention. For the purposes of this priority, related services include the following: speech-language pathology and audiology services, interpreting services, psychological services, applied behavior analysis, physical therapy and occupational therapy, recreation, including therapeutic recreation, social work services, counseling services, including rehabilitation counseling, and orientation and mobility services. Interdisciplinary scholars are expected to complete shared coursework, group assignments, and coordinated field experiences. Next slide. The purpose of Absolute Priority 2, preparation of special education, early intervention, and related services personnel attending minority serving institutions is to increase the number of ethnically and racially diverse personnel who are fully credentialed to serve children, including infants, toddlers, and youth with disabilities. Minority serving institutions are institutions of higher education whose enrollment of a single minority or a combination of minorities exceed 50% of the total enrollment. Under this absolute priority, the department will fund high-quality projects within MSIs that prepare special education, early intervention, and related services personnel at the certification, bachelor's degree, master's degree, educational specialist degree, or clinical doctoral degree levels. For the purpose of this priority, certification refers to programs of study that lead to state licensure, endorsement, or certification that qualifies graduates to teach or provide services to children with disabilities. Programs of study that lead to a certificate of completion from the MSI, but do not lead to state licensure, endorsement, or certification do not qualify. Next slide. Under Absolute Priority 1 and Absolute Priority 2, applicants can propose a project under Focus Area A, preparing personnel to serve infants, toddlers, and preschool-age children with disabilities, or Focus Area B, preparing personnel to serve school-age children with disabilities. OSEP may fund out-of-rank order, high-quality applications to ensure that projects are funded across both Focus Area A and Focus Area B. Next slide, please. The 3 to 5K grant program defines a scholar as a student who is enrolled in a program that leads to certification, licensure, endorsement needed to serve IDA-eligible children with disabilities. Scholars are not those individuals pursuing degrees in general education or early childhood education. Upon graduation, scholars are expected to be able to be employed in a position that serves children with disabilities for a minimum of 51% of their time or caseload. Lastly, scholars must be able to fulfill service obligation requirements. Next slide. A 3 to 5K application is funded up to $250,000 per year for 5 years. Over 5 years, 65% or more of the award must be used for scholar support. Applicants may use up to the first 12 months of the performance period and up to $100,000 of the first budget period for planning. Applicants proposing to use year 1 for program development must ensure that 65% of the total award minus funds allocated for program development will be used for scholar support. Now, my colleague and another competition manager for the 3 to 5K grant program, Dr. Colleen Reed, will review the competition information. Next slide, please.
Competition information. In this section, we will review application narrative and selection criteria, project assurances, and general requirements. Next slide. A complete application includes the application narrative and selection criteria. In scoring the projects, the following breakdown will occur. Significance of the project, 10 points. Quality of project services, 45 points. Quality of project evaluation, 25 points. Quality of project personnel, management plan, and resources, 20 points. Next slide. For the significance of the project, rated 0 to 10 points. In determining the significance of the proposed project, the Secretary considers the following factors. 1, the extent to which the proposed project will prepare personnel for fields in which shortages have been demonstrated. And 2, the importance or magnitude of the results or outcomes likely to be attained by the proposed project, especially improvements in teaching and child achievement. Next slide. In determining the quality of project services, the Secretary considers the following factors. 1, the quality and sufficiency of strategies for ensuring equal access and treatment for eligible project participants who are members of groups that have traditionally been underrepresented based on race, culture, national origin, gender, age, or disability. 2, the extent to which the services to be provided by the proposed project reflect up-to-date knowledge from research and effective practice. 3, the extent to which the training or professional development services to be provided by the proposed project are of sufficient quality, intensity, and duration to lead to improvements in practice among the recipients of those services. Next slide. 4, The extent to which the services to be provided by the proposed project involve the collaboration of appropriate partners for maximizing the effectiveness of project services. And 5, the extent to which the proposed activities constitute a coherent, sustained program of training in the field. Next slide. In determining the quality of the evaluation, the Secretary considers the following factors. 1, the extent to which the methods of evaluation are thorough, feasible, and appropriate to the goals, objectives, and outcomes of the proposed project. 2, the extent to which the goals, objectives, and outcomes to be achieved by the proposed project are clearly specified and measurable. 3, the extent to which the methods of evaluation include the use of objective performance measures that are clearly related to the intended outcomes of the project and will produce quantitative and qualitative data to the extent possible. 4, the extent to which the methods of evaluation will provide performance feedback and permit periodic assessment of progress toward achieving intended outcomes. Next slide. In determining the quality of the proposed project personnel, management plan, and resources, the Secretary considers the following factors. 1, the extent to which the applicant encourages applications for employment from persons who are members of groups that have traditionally been underrepresented based on race, culture, national origin, gender, age, or disability. 2, the qualifications, including relevant training and experience of key project personnel. 3, the adequacy of the management plan to achieve the objectives of the proposed project on time and within budget, including clearly defined responsibilities, timelines, and milestones for accomplishing project tasks. Next slide. Quality of project personnel management plan and resources continue. Other considerations are 1, the extent to which the time commitments of the project director and principal investigator and other key project personnel are appropriate and adequate to meet the objectives of the proposed project. 2, the adequacy of support, including facilities, equipment, supplies, and other resources from the applicant organization or the lead applicant organization. And 3, the extent to which the costs are reasonable in relation to the objectives, design, and potential significance of the proposed project. Things to consider for this section are the qualifications of key project personnel and their time commitments, adequacy of the management plan, adequacy of support and resources for applicant organization, and adequacy of the budget. Next slide. Required project assurances. 1, the project syllabi will appear in Appendix B. 2, ensure that efforts to recruit a diverse range of scholars, including diversity of race, ethnicity, or national origin, are consistent with applicable law. 3, service obligation and dispersing scholarships. And 4, meet the statute requirements in Section 662E through H of IDEA. Next slide. Other project assurances include 65% of the total budget will be used for scholar support. 2, ensure that scholar support costs such as tuition and stipends are scholarship assistance and not financial assistance based on the condition that the scholar works for the grantee, such as through graduate assistantships. 3, ensure that a revised project budget will be submitted should the project not be able to recruit and enroll the proposed number of scholars that can graduate from the program by the end of the project period. And a reminder for the project directors conference to properly budget in the sense of if the conference is either virtual or in person. Next slide. Other insurances, of course, budget for the attendance at project directors meeting. And again, emphasizing that this budget requires at least one individual from the project to attend, and that the budget meets any requirements related to in-person versus virtual attendance, that there's an adequate budget. 2, participation in cross-project collaboration, advanced trainings and cross-site learning opportunities. 3, accessible websites. And 4, annual data reports on scholars. And don't forget to include your OSEP markers on your websites. Next slide. General requirements. Recipients of funding under this competition must make positive efforts to employ and advance in employment qualified individuals with disability. Each applicant for and recipient of funding under this program must involve individuals with disabilities or parents of individuals with disabilities ages birth through 26 in planning, implementing, and evaluating the project. Lastly, the applicant must describe steps to ensure equitable access to and participation in its program for students, teachers, and other program beneficiaries with special needs. Next slide. This next section will cover submission information, such as applicant submission, submission tips, ineligible applications, and application tips. Next slide. Applications must be submitted electronically using grants.gov. Applications may not be submitted via email. Applications must be submitted no later than 11:59 and 59 seconds on Eastern Time on April 15th, 2022. Application narrative sections and all other attachments to the application must be uploaded as a PDF, read-only, non-modifiable format preferred, or a Microsoft Word file. Next slide. Other submission tips. Register early. Grants.gov may take 5 or more business days to complete. Be sure that your registration with the System for Award Management, SAM, is current. Submit early. Do not wait until the last day to submit your application. Grants.gov will put a date, time, and stamp on your application and then process it after it is fully uploaded. Verify your submission is okay. Verify that grants.gov received your submission on time and that it was validated successfully. Next slide. Maximum funding levels for each grant are noted in the notice. Recommended organization, page limits, spacing, and font size facilitate the application review process. Read-only, non-modifiable PDF files facilitate the consolidating of application elements in the review process. Finally, please read carefully grants.gov submission procedures and tips for applicants found in section B of the application process package. Next slide. Ineligible applications. The following will be deemed ineligible. Duplicate applications. Applications received after the deadline, which again is April 15th, 2022 at 11:59 and 59 seconds Eastern Time. Applications not addressing the published priority will also be deemed ineligible. Next slide.
Thank you, Carlene. This is the last page of our presentation. The information that we shared today was summarized due to the logistics of the webinar and is for guidance only. Please read the entire notice inviting applications thoroughly, the instructions and all other related statutes, regulations, and references. Should you have questions, please contact us via email. You can contact me for Absolute Priority 1, Focus Area A, and Carlene for Absolute Priority 1, Focus Area B. If you have questions regarding Absolute Priority 2, Minority Serving Institutions, please contact Dr. Tracy Dixon. Thank you very much for your interest in the FY22 3 to 5K competition. We wish you all the best.